Hey everyone, welcome to another Joe Gomez guitar lesson. We're going to continue with the practicing series. We're going to move on to a new subject, and we're going to start talking about intervals now. And even though we've talked about scales a little bit, which are made from intervals, I think this is a good place to start talking about them, and I think it'll be easier to understand arpeggios and even some of the scales a little bit more once you understand intervals. So why are intervals important? Well, they're kind of like your building blocks of music. Uh, and then your three components of melody include scales, arpeggios, and intervals. And what that means is that's where your melodies come from. They're either made up from a scale, they're made up from an arpeggio, or they come from intervals. Uh, and so a lot of teaching comes kind of from the piano, and I find that really hard to go back to the guitar with. So especially if you have like your list of intervals and you have how many half steps away each note is to the next one to create that interval. I don't know if it's just because I'm lazy or I can't visualize that. So I've kind of done this little system myself. And I'm sure other people have done this too. I don't think I've created this, but I kind of think more of a shape when I'm thinking of what an interval is. So to break it down, an interval is just the distance between one note to the next. Uh, and you can go through a scale or it can go from here all the way up to there. You know, that could be an interval. But I'm going to talk about pretty much within the octave right now. So I'm going to just pick the note A. That's the fifth fret on the sixth string. That's my A note. And I'm going to go kind of walk through all the intervals and kind of show you the shapes that I'm thinking about. So the first interval is called a unison, which is exactly the same note played twice. That would be considered a unison. Uh, so that one's pretty easy to think about. But you could also, if your hand's large enough to where you can make a stretch, you can go back, or you can use an open string, right? Which is how some people tune their guitars, and they see if those notes match up. So that's unison. The next one is called a minor second. And what a minor second is it's just a half step above the note you started on. So this would be like going A to A sharp or A to B flat. Right? So that one's pretty easy to visualize on one string because it's just up one fret. Another thing that I like to do is think about where else that interval could be played. Especially if I want to put it in a chord. I want something that has some dissonance on it. I can find that A to B flat. Again, if I've got a scale that has a minor second in it or a flat 2, some of the jazz guys might call that a flat 9, but in this case we're going to work with 2 because it'll be easier to visualize or kind of think about later. So that's a minor second. After that, we've got a major second, which is just another half step up. So now we've got a whole step from where we started. We got A to B. It's called a minor second. And that's, again, pretty easy to see on the guitar. You just skip over one fret. If you're thinking about moving between the strings, now we've got kind of a 2-note gap or a 2-fret gap in between the notes we're playing. So I'm playing fret 5 to fret 2 on the next string. So that's a minor or a major second. And again, if you've got a scale that starts with a whole step or a major second, then you can kind of visualize how to make that scale if you don't know a position for it. After that, we've got a minor third, and this is an extremely important one because this is where our chords come from, and we'll talk more about chord construction and the chord section of this practicing series. But this minor third is an important one, so you definitely want to know this. And most people that know the pentatonic scale or minor pentatonic scale kind of know how that starts. going from A to C. So that's making that minor third interval. If we're doing it on the next string, look like this. Alright. After that, you've got a major third. So this is another really important one to know. So we're just going up a half step each time. So this one has 3 frets in between. So I'm going 5th fret to 9th fret. If I'm playing it on 2 different strings, like that. The next one gets, the naming of it gets kind of weird, and it's called a perfect fourth. So there's only 2 intervals that are called perfect, and from what I've kind of understand is, you know, back when they were first coming up with harmonies in music, they said that you know, these 2 particular intervals were the perfect ones. Which, if you play a lot of things in fourth, it kind of sounds like a Gregorian chant or something. You know, so that's the perfect fourth interval there. So if we're playing it on one string, we've got a pretty big stretch there. We're going 5 to 10. If we're going to the next string, it's on the same fret. If you probably know, the guitar is tuned in fourths except for G to B, which is a major third. Next, we've got a kind of another funny named interval. This is called the augmented fourth, or sharp 4. It could also be the flat 5 or diminished 5th. It's also called the tritone. So it's got a couple different names. Jazz guys probably know it more as the tritone. But yeah, you can call it whatever you want, just as long as you know what the interval is. Playing it on one string is kind of a huge stretch because it's going from 5 to 11. So you probably won't ever play it like that. But if you're playing it across the string, it's kind of like that. So 5th fret on the 6th string, 6th fret on the 5th string. It makes kind of an ugly sound by itself. And I've heard that this interval was actually banned in music at one point, you know, before the Renaissance era. However, that's an important one to know as well. Our ears have kind of grown to appreciate that. You know, in a blues, that interval is played pretty much throughout a blues because it's inside of our chords. If I play a G7 chord, right, well, that tritone is right in the middle of that chord. And a lot of guys will call those guide tones, and we'll explore more of that when we get into the chord parts of this, to show how that tritone or guide tones kind of move around in a fairly easy way on the guitar. So after that, we've got the other perfect interval, which is called the perfect 5th, which, if you've ever played any rock songs, you know your power chords. That's a perfect 5th interval. I would also explore playing it the other direction. So what I'm doing is I'm actually skipping a string. I'm skipping the 5th string, going to the 4th string, and I'm playing the 2nd fret. So those notes are A and E. So you can also build it that way, which the reason I think that's important is because when we start exploring chords, you'll start to see how these things pop up a little bit easier. After that, we've got the minor 6, which on 2 strings would look like this. So that's going A to F, or like this. So whenever I'm thinking about these particular intervals, then I'm usually thinking of shapes rather than notes, because it's kind of universal across the guitar. After that, we've got the major 6th, which has a much brighter sound, right? And on 2 different strings. That's A to F sharp. After that, we have the minor 7th, or flat 7, which, if we were playing it on 2 different strings, we're starting to get a stretch again. It's going from 5 to 10. The notes are A and G. we're playing it on two different strings, same fret, just skipping over a string. Again, those are A and G. And that's another important one to know, especially if you're getting into jazz harmony, or where you're extending the range of a chord. You're not just playing the triads anymore, and you're starting to get into major sevenths and dominant sevenths, minor sevenths, everything else. So that's important to know. After that, we've got the major seventh, which again, if we're playing that on two strings, that's kind of a big stretch. It's 5 to 11. The notes are A and G sharp. It's a little bit easier to play. This is on fret 5 and fret 6. Again, the notes are A and G sharp. Then after that, we're back at our octave. Right? And sometimes it's nice to play your octave like this too. So that's starting from the notes from the 6th string. Pretty much the shapes will stay the same for no matter where you start at. You just have to be aware of the B string, because again, the guitar is tuned in fourths here, here, here. And you kind of hear how, if you combine that sound, it's got a particular sound to it. And this one's different, right? That goes back to our major third interval. You know, so you can hear it a little bit better. And then you're back at a perfect fourth interval. And I forgot why I brought that up. But oh yeah, the B string thing. Yeah. So what happens with the B string is whatever you would normally play on that string for that interval, you would just move it up one fret. So again, if we were playing A, and let's say we're wanting to do our minor third interval, which is kind of this shape. So if we brought that down, that doesn't sound like our minor third, right? So we would have to get that back into the picture. So we have, so this is like playing 5 to 3. So we got a fret gap in between. If I do the same thing on this A, now I've got the B string involved. Now I'm playing the 2nd fret in the open string to kind of simulate what would normally be a minor third interval shape. But because of the B string, I've got to move that one note up. Now I've got a minor third interval. And let's do the major third just so that makes sense. So major third interval, A and C sharp. You can kind of hear how that already just kind of sounds like a major chord. If I take that same shape and try to play that on the G and B string, that sounds minor, it doesn't sound happy anymore. So again, whatever I play on the B string, I need to move up one fret. Alright, so now I've got the A and C sharp, just like here. So I would explore playing this little idea all over the neck, just so you can get used to seeing these particular shapes. And then we'll start to learn how to use them, and maybe look at how to do some like composition things or chord melody things with it, or maybe just add harmonies to your lines using intervals. And maybe we'll even talk about some soloing techniques with more intervallic playing. But yeah, get the shapes down. One other good thing is this is kind of applying your theory to an idea, and I always find when I'm actually trying to apply theory knowledge, I learn it a lot faster. So the theory knowledge is learning, what the 4th is of A, or what the 5th is, and from there we can start extending that to, what's the 9th, 11th, and 13th. You'll start to find those notes a lot quicker, or you kind of come up with them a lot quicker when you're soloing, and you want to play more extended ranges. You can play those notes because you know what they are at this point. This also helps a lot with chord construction, and also helps a lot with scale construction, because you can kind of think and visualize the shape and kind of come up with your own patterns as you go. But I'd also do it with all the notes for the 12 keys. That way you know what the answers are. So someone asked you what the minor second of E was or something, you could say, oh, no, it's F, you know. And over time, you'll start to learn that a little bit better. So, hope everybody got something out of this, and we'll get to some more interesting stuff with intervals next week. Thanks.